You know, there's a lot to be asked, a lot to be known, and I wonder why Joe's not allowed out of his house. And somebody that's been in his house and very close to him, former senior advisor to Joe Biden, my good friend Mo Vela, joins us today. Hey Mo, how you doing, brother?
How are you? It's good to be back. You were my first interview ever, and now 220 interviews later, you had me back.
Wow, you see how I launched your career? Don't forget me
You
when
launched
you're
my
huge.
career.
Don't forget me, Mo. You know?
Oh, come on.
Even though we didn't agree on a lot, I always treated you like family. You know,
Yes, you
you're a
did.
great friend to me. I appreciate knowing you.
I feel the same way about you, my brother.
Thank you, buddy. So look, I mean, I know you were very close to the former Vice President Joe Biden. You're a senior advisor, and you know you're a high echelon Democrat. But it sure does look like the team around him is leading a lot more than he is right now. That's just my objective opinion.
I'm actually been I've been very surprised at folks like you and others who are making this issue or bringing up this issue. He's having a virtual town hall every single day. He's talking to voters every day. I just don't think he's uh, out in the way all of you guys might want him to be out there. And frankly, I think he's been very respectful and compassionate and empathetic about what our country's going through right now and demonstrating that compassion and empathy and leadership that's so lacking in Donald Trump. So I disagree with you. You and I don't always agree, but I love you.
Yeah.
But I don't see it the same way, John. He's out there. He's out there every single day. And I just don't think people don't want to see what they don't want to see. That's
Okay.
what I've concluded.
All right. Well, I hear you on that, and I'm, somewhat savvy technologically, but it is you can cultivate the crowd for these virtual town halls, also. That's for sure.
Sure.
But
Or the
it's
more barrier.
it's still something. But I'm at my when I base my observations. Okay, great. He goes on social media and stuff. That's great. Have you, in your experience, Republican or Democrat, have you ever seen a president facing such a hostile media? So Trump is taking questions every single day, getting crossfire from everywhere. I don't see Joe on air talking to journalists and taking questions off the cuff. I don't see that. So I think they're trying to keep him in a good zone to not have too many flubs.
Well, let me address the first part of the question first, and then I'll be happy to answer the second part. The first part is there's only one way any president in the history of the United States has ever handled the media, and that's by telling them the truth. Sometimes it's not what people want to hear, and sometimes it is what people want to hear. But when you have a pattern of fabrication and lying and contradiction and hypocrisy, John, then you know what? Any credible journalist is going to stay on you until you finally admit the truth. And so, Donald Trump is the victim of his own patterns, his own ridiculous fabrication. So I have no sympathy there. He could have had a great relationship with the media. It is not the media's fault. They're doing the job of the First Amendment, which is ask the questions so the American people can be properly informed. Number one. Number two, the second part of the question. Look, Joe Biden takes questions all the time. I've been on 3 virtual town halls that he's done in the last 7 days. Took questions from voters, excuse me, and I just don't think there's any lack of knowledge right now where Joe Biden stands on the pandemic, how he would have done it differently. He warned us in an op-ed in January when this president was golfing and holding political rallies, the virus was spreading. So, you know what? I don't buy it. He's answered a lot of questions. He's made it very clear how his leadership contrasts with the current president. I'm very content and happy with how he's handling this virtual new normal of our lives.
So Mo, a little earlier you were referring to any credible journalist should ask this, should ask that. Um,
Yeah,
there are a lot of questions being asked around former Joe Biden staffer Tara Reade, making
yeah,
allegations. Back in the day, there was something that went
sure.
wrong. Um, I have always been, even through this whole Me Too thing, I've always been, number one, if somebody's got a story to tell, they're allowed to tell it. And
I
number
agree.
two, we can't go to a culture of guilt by accusation. So,
I agree. I
whatever
agree with
whatever
you.
forces of the universe must come in. And Alan Dershowitz wrote the book, guilt by accusation. You can't, so I'm in the middle on it, right? But
Yeah.
I saw this huge outpouring of Me Too and every woman must be heard, and Harvey Weinstein we have to hear them. I hear you. How come no credible journalist is taking her story from her?
Oh, I think that many of them have talked to her, and many of them I've done many interviews already with very credible journalists and major publications who have looked into the story. And so many of them, John, have concluded what I have concluded, that there's too many suspicions, inconsistencies, and discrepancies in the story for it to be accurate and true and viable. And so, look, I think it's been heard, she's been seen. There are a lot of, endless questions about why now, where were you, why did you commend Joe Biden in the last 10 years about his advocacy of women? Why did you make love notes about Vladimir Putin? Why you were a big Bernie. You could go on and on and on. But here's the deal. I appreciate what you just said, and this is why you and I respect each other. Because you're right, an allegation or an accusation is no more than that, an allegation or accusation. In the court of law, you would have to prove it to be true, right?
Yeah.
In the court of humanity, I agree with you. You have to prove it to be true. Can you say it? Sure. Can you allege it? Absolutely, Miss Reade. Can you accuse? It's all yours, Miss Reade. But here's what's not all hers, that she can't falsely accuse. You cannot falsely allege. And let me tell you, John.
So you think this is, you think, I haven't heard Joe Biden answer a specific binary on his view on this personally, but you think from what you know, this is a completely false and baseless allegation.
And let me tell you why. All of the reasons I just said, suspicions, inconsistencies, and discrepancies. Let me add one thing most of your guests cannot add. I was the director of management and administration to Vice President Joe Biden in the White House for the first 16 months of the Obama administration. And my portfolio included human resources. Not one iota of a second did I ever have anybody in my office? Did I ever hear a rumor, an innuendo, or did I witness any behavior that would support her false allegations? Combining all those previous things I said with my personal experience and professional experience, having run the HR component of the Vice President's office in the White House, I have concluded it is unequivocally false, John.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a big revelation, and I hope the truth comes out. That's all I'll say.
The truth has come out. I know Joe Biden, John.
Yeah.
And just like I would be able to say about you, you're a man of character and integrity. We don't always agree, but I know you're a man of character and integrity.
Well, thank you.
And somebody could say something bad about you, that doesn't make it true.
So, just to go back to the Brett Kavanaugh time now, we had a woman who couldn't remember the day, she couldn't remember the place, she couldn't remember the time, but she could remember distinctly that Brett Kavanaugh was rough with her or something. And to get on the Supreme Court, he had to submit to an FBI investigation into a claim that was 30 years old. To make the public feel good about it, you were in the HR office, should Joe Biden be subject to the same type of scrutiny as a Supreme Court justice?
Well, I think I don't know that that's a proper analogy, to be honest with you, only because I didn't say a word about I don't even remember her name. Is it Christine Blasey, I think?
Right, Blasey Ford.
I'm with you. I don't start. I think every victim, not just women, there are men who are victimized too. we've got to be very fair about this. No double standards. Men and women who feel victimized should be heard. Miss Reade has been heard. There are many credible journalists, right? So if in the justice's situation, in Kavanaugh's situation, the FBI investigated. In this case, many publications have looked into this, John, and you know that. Credible colleagues of yours that have been respected as media journalists who have always fought to make sure the truth comes out, they've looked at this. They've talked to her. They've talked to people that know her. There are too many holes, too many changes in her story, too many inconsistencies, too many questions about her character, too many inconsistencies, my friend.
Okay.
And so again, combining that with my personal knowledge of Joe Biden, I'm not there. I just don't get it. I don't buy it.
Well, look, I personally, I'm with you. I want to see the truth come out. And I wasn't happy when they tracked down Trump every day about, a former porn star and blah, blah, blah. Wasn't happy when they went after Brett Kavanaugh. So I can't get into the gotcha culture myself. I want the truth to come out, and that's it. And let there be a fair fight.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I agree with you on that. And the gotcha culture, in fact, I've turned down several interviews because I know that these are gotcha kind of journalists. There's credible journalists. There are credible journalists, and then there are gotcha journalists, right? The same thing you're talking about in previous instances. So look,
the bleach. I want to talk to you about the bleach. I did a little exercise on Liquid Lunch where I read the president's words exactly, okay? And I understand that his form is not great. I do understand that. As a supporter of his policies up till the pandemic, which is out of his control, but his form is not great, in my view, because it leaves a lot open to interpretation sometimes. But he asked a question, if they could get light inside the body and if they could use light to do some kind of disinfecting and disinfectants work quickly. The media, to me, took him asking a question, can we do something like that, into him suggesting everyone go out and drink some Clorox. The words don't add up to what the media is telling me.
Oh, you know what? I don't agree with you. And I've looked at it a lot because I was worried about the same thing, John, to be honest with you, because I'm not one to, as you know, I don't go by anybody's talking points. I don't say what people have told me to say. I say whatever I believe is the truth, just like you do. And I looked at those words. He did not say go drink bleach, but he did not actually align the UV lighting solution with the disinfectant solution. They were two different topics for him. And when you're asking the question of, well, I saw that disinfectant could get rid of it very quickly, that's not a question to Dr. Birx. That was him thinking out loud. To your point, you know what, Donald? Keep that to yourself, right? That's why he's gotten the backlash. Is, you know what? If you're thinking that, go talk to somebody privately about that. Don't say that to the world. It makes him look like an idiot. It makes our nation look foolish. And he got the backlash from the media and the public for having even said that out loud. If you're thinking about it, go talk to an expert, but talk to them confidentially. And then if you actually have viability to a disinfectant that could be ingested and not kill you, right? Maybe that would have been a nicer way to say it, or don't say it until you know it's actually viable. So I don't agree with you, but people are going to interpret things, as we all know. All you got to do is look at the Bible. One person can read the same phrase in the Bible and interpret it 10 different ways, and I can interpret it a complete different one, right? So,
well, that's certainly true. And I was paraphrasing, the two questions into one, and I know he said them differently, but.
The second one was a question. I think he said, and I know he said it was more of a statement. I saw disinfectant can get rid of this very quickly. I'm paraphrasing, but it wasn't a question when he said the disinfectant line, and that's what got him in trouble, John.
Here's exactly what he said, Mo. He said, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute. 1 minute.
That's a statement, not a question.
Right. Okay. But this is a sentence. I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. Is there any way we can do something like that by injection or almost a cleaning? It would
So
be
the
interesting to
sentence.
check that. You're going to have to
So
use medical doctors, but it sounds interesting.
so John.
Those are the exact words. I'm reading them.
Yeah. So we're both right because I said he didn't. There wasn't a question from the part that I interpreted. There
Got
was
it.
a question followed the statement that I just referred to. So
Understood.
both of us are correct. The problem is not a statement and a question. The problem, my friend, is if you said that on air, you would lose a lot of viewers because your credibility would be in question.
Possible.
If you want to say, let's explore what viable solutions exist, I've asked my doctors, Dr. Burks is sitting here, I've asked her to work with the task force to look at every.
Mo's camera froze, Nico. Yeah, all right. We had a little technical difficulty there with Mo Vela, but he's on fire today, the guy. And, we don't always agree. We have agreed and found common ground on things in the past, Mo and I. But, to be honest with you, today he's fired up. He's behind Joe 100%. I can see that right off the bat. But we had a little technical difficulty there, and me and Mo were having a little difficulty there because he's going at me pretty hard today. But that's what we're here for.
John.
That's what we're here for. We're here to have a good, thoughtful conversation.
John, the other question are we on air still?
Yeah, Mo, just turn your camera around.
Okay. So, John, the only other question I would ask
Flip
you on
it.
this topic is, how about Governor Hogan in Maryland, who received several phone calls about ingesting bleach or detergent or disinfectant, I should say?
Yeah, I understand. And New York, they reported 10 people called a hotline and asked if it was okay to do it. But I would also venture to say that I'd love to see what other kind of calls a hotline gets every 10 calls about it a day.
I'm not sure how they're relevant to this topic.
Well,
but
I'm with you. But
the fact of the matter is that the governor of Maryland, who is a Republican, I might add, felt compelled to even announce that he had received too many calls about ingesting disinfectant. And so words matter, John. I think that's the bottom line. And you started fairly by saying he's more often inartful than he is artful in his wording.
Mo, could you hit your camera on, because you have the shot on me, which is you don't look at me, just let me see you.
Hey, Mo, just press the button in the middle on the bottom.
The bottom middle, video camera button.
Yes, let's see.
The bottom middle.
Oh, you mean here? I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on, we got to see that pretty face. So we're working on the fly.
Hey, John, there we are.
Okay, there we go. Okay, now we're joined again by Mo Vela. A little technical difficulty, but we're social distancing, we're Skyping, we're learning new things on the fly. Mo, I was just, while you were popped off, I was telling the audience that, we usually find some common ground, at least thoughtful conversation and a broadening of the horizons. But today you fired up. It seems like, everybody's really got to get on the bandwagon and fire it up for Joe Biden. There's a big groundswell.
John, you know me well enough to know that that's not what motivates me. I'm like you. We're trying to get to the truth. But the one thing that I'm not going to play a game about is candy coating stuff and pretending, no matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. If you will remind your audience for me, maybe they will remember. When you talked about Bernie Sanders, I was the first one to say socialism was not the solution for this country. He was wrong for this nation. So I'm an equal opportunity truth teller, my friend.
Well, let me ask you. All right, let me get some truth, Daddy, on this one. Bernie Sanders, he says we built a multi-generational, multilingual, blah, 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 all this other stuff. He did have more of a, organic movement going with him for a little bit here, right? Now,
Yeah.
he did the right thing by the party, in my view, by suspending his campaign. But then he urged his supporters to remember that he's endorsing Joe, but he's staying on the ballot so that they can have a stronger voice at the convention, and he wanted to still get delegates. And then they come in and cancel New York, which is a big hunk of delegates. In New York, I'm the vice chairman of the Reform Party, which is a small third party. So I'm for
Yes.
more people voting, more people participating, more voices being heard. Canceling a primary. Right now, they're telling us that we can do it all by mail. Other states have done it by mail. Why would they cancel a primary and just assume, well, that's who the people want?
I'm going to agree with you on this one. You knew we were going to find something to agree on. I actually disagreed with canceling the primary. If we could do it by mail, which I believe that we can, if mail-in voting works for our Americans abroad and our military personnel around the world, then for God's sakes, it could work for me and you, right? And it could work for every American. And so there are no excuses, in my opinion, that not to have had the primary. We could have gotten the ballots out and we could have voted by mail. In fact, I think it would have been a good example and set the stage in case we have to do that in November. So I agree with you, John. See,
Yeah, all right. Let me ring the bell because me and Mo agreed. But no, the strangely enough, the Democrats want it both ways. There are major efforts afoot to try to get a more expanded mail-in voting system into all of these stimulus packages. So you have the Democrats in Washington out there saying that everyone should be allowed to mail it in, okay? And I don't know how I even feel about that, me personally, but so in Washington they're saying we want more mail-in voting. And then, one of the most populated Democratic states, they're saying we can't do it by mail-in voting this quickly. It's kind of like one or the other.
You know what? I'm actually, although I agree with you on the issue, I'm going to actually give Andy Cuomo a break here because I am absolutely certain with the leadership that he's demonstrated through this pandemic and his ability to keep us informed in a truthful and honest manner. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I know that what motivated him, the last thing that motivated him was politics. I can assure you of that. He really probably did it. I know he did it because of his concern for the safety and the health of our citizens. I also live in New York, so I understand why he may have made that choice. I don't agree, just like you don't, but I certainly understand what motivated him to do that, and I can respect that.
All right. Well, in our last few minutes here, the man, who's around him, the team. Would you give me a little, would you give a little top three on who you think is in the final running to be the vice president?
Sure. Thank you for giving me three because everybody asked me for one.
Well, yeah.
And I've been lately saying if I had $1 for every time I was asked, I'd be retired by now. So thanks for giving me three.
No, you can give me your one and two, and then I always like, I'm a fan of the underdog, so I always like to throw in a dark horse.
Yeah, appreciate it, John. Look, I've said this all along for the last 30, 60 days. We're very, very blessed in the Democratic Party to have a huge pipeline of qualified, incredible women. So from the West Coast to the East Coast, I would say with Kamala Harris, Catherine Cortez Masto in Nevada, Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota, Tammy Duckworth in Illinois, Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts, and I'm probably leaving off a few, but my goodness, we have from the East Coast to the West Coast and everywhere in between. He's got incredible, incredible women to pick from, and I trust he'll make the right decision, John.
All right, well, so you don't want to give me a top three. I opened the door for you and you gave me
Do you want my personal top three?
Yeah.
My personal top three are Kamala Harris, Catherine Cortez Masto, and Tammy Duckworth. Those are my top three.
Okay. I think this could be a mistake, but I'm going to weigh in with my top three too, and we'll
Okay.
keep a little listing on this. But I'm
Okay,
going to
and
tell
then we'll
you.
come back together.
I'm going to tell you a quick story that you may not even believe, but in 2008, I was doing some production work for the Democratic National Committee at the convention out in Denver. Remember the convention in Denver?
I was there, my friend. I was there.
Okay, so now I'm way outnumbered, and the guys I'm working with decide it was Terry McAuliffe's birthday. And we were staying in this big brownstone right near the convention center. So they said, we're going to throw an after party for Terry McAuliffe's birthday. Okay, this is 2008. That night, the house is full of Democrats, every Democrat as far as I could see. And I had a sneaking hunch because someone had mentioned this Sarah Palin to me. And I threw out in front of all these Democrats, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes way outside the box for a good-looking chick who loves guns from Alaska, Sarah Palin. And they were like, get the hell out of here. We were drinking, and, we were at a party, And then I don't remember if it was the next day or 2 days later, but my friends called and say, how the hell did he come up with that? I personally think he's going to go with Klobuchar. I think anybody.
Oh, interesting.
I think anybody running his campaign knows that they need her home state because somehow or another Trump's numbers guys got them into the right places. And if they could swing that state and keep stabilized with the women, I personally think, Mo, that James Clyburn individually saved Joe Biden's entire campaign. When he came out with his endorsement right before Super Tuesday, right before South Carolina, to me, Joe's campaign looked like it was on life support then. So once he got Clyburn,
you're right.
and once he got Clyburn and Obama, then they know they had the coalition down for the African American vote. I would say my outside second is the what's her name, Catherine Cortez from Vegas.
Yeah, in Nevada. Yep.
From Nevada, because I think there he could achieve a lot of good demographics out there, in, New Mexico, Nevada, Latin Americans.
And she's Hispanic.
That's what I'm saying. So those. I only have two. I mean, I'll throw in Elizabeth Warren as a dark horse, only because maybe now that they're going to screw Bernie out of all the delegates, they'll figure out some deal and take Elizabeth Warren with some conditional attachments.
So let's make a deal. After he announces his selection, let's come back together so we can have a liquid lunch. How's that?
All right. Well, he's supposed to do it tomorrow, right?
Oh no, I don't think so.
I
No,
thought he said May. I thought he said May 1st.
He just announced his vetting committee for the VP selection. So they'll have work to do for the next few weeks, probably.
All right. Well, hopefully I see you before that, Mo.
I hope so, John. It's so good to be with you.
Same with you. I hope everybody's safe and sound by you when
Thank you. They are, and I hope the same for you, my friend.
You're on, and we'll compare notes in a week or two.
I look forward to it.
Thank you,
Stay
man.
healthy, my brother.
Same to you. That's Mo Vela.